The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms, covering more than 200 conquered worlds. Every species they had met had fallen before them. Some had surrendered without a fight. Others had resisted for a few days or weeks. But in the end, the result was always the same. The Dominion always won. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was tall even for his species, with dark green scales that covered his entire body. His eyes were yellow and cold like a snake watching its prey. He had commanded the Dominion fleet for over 60 years. In that time, he had conquered 97 planets. He had never failed, not once. Today, his mission was simple. His scouts had found a new world in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. The species living there called their world Earth. Looked at the data on his screen. The humans, as they called themselves, were a young species. They had only recently learned to leave their own planet. Their technology was primitive. They had no unified government. Instead, they were divided into hundreds of small nations that often fought each other. Pathetic, said quietly. His second-in-command, a younger officer named stood beside him. The conquest should be quick, Admiral, she said. Our estimates suggest 72 cycles at most. Nodded slowly. He had heard this many times before. Every new world was supposed to be easy, and so far, every new world had been exactly that. Send the standard message, he ordered. Let them know what is coming. The transmission was prepared within minutes. It was the same message the Dominion had sent to hundreds of worlds before. A simple warning, a demand for surrender, a promise of what would happen to those who refused. The signal shot across space at faster than light speed. It reached Earth in less than an hour. On Earth, it was a normal Tuesday afternoon. People went to work. Children went to school. The news talked about politics and weather and sports. No one knew that everything was about to change. The message arrived at exactly 3:47 p.m. Eastern Time. It did not come through normal channels. It did not appear on one television or one radio station. It appeared on all of them, every screen on the planet, every phone, every computer, every device that could receive a signal. The message was in every language: English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi. Every language spoken on Earth translated with perfect accuracy. People of Earth, you have been designated for harvest. Resistance is mathematically futile. Prepare for integration into the Dominion. For exactly 4 seconds, the entire planet was silent. Then the chaos began. In New York, people ran screaming through the streets. In Tokyo, traffic stopped completely as drivers stared at their phones in shock. In London, the Prime Minister called an emergency meeting. In Moscow, generals rushed to their command centers. In small towns and big cities, in rich countries and poor ones, people looked up at the sky and felt afraid. The United Nations called an emergency session within 3 hours. Every world leader who could attend did so. Those who could not attend sent representatives. The meeting room was filled with the most powerful people on the planet, and none of them knew what to do. We must prepare our defenses, said one general. Every nuclear weapon we have should be ready to launch. And then what? Asked a diplomat. We blow ourselves up before they can invade. Perhaps we should try to communicate, suggested another. Open a dialogue, negotiate terms. Negotiate, the general laughed bitterly. They called us a harvest. You do not negotiate with the farmer when you are the crop. The arguments continued for hours. No one could agree on anything. Fear made people angry. Anger made people stupid. The most powerful leaders on Earth sat in a room and shouted at each other while the clock ticked down to their extinction. But while the world's leaders argued, something else was happening. In a small monitoring station in Colorado, a young communications officer named was doing her job. She had been assigned to track the alien signal, to analyze it, to understand how it worked. was 26 years old. She had grown up in a small town in Ohio. She had joined the Air Force because she wanted to see the world. She had ended up staring at computer screens in a basement. It was not what she had dreamed of. But today, her boring job had become the most important job on Earth. She studied the signal for hours. She ran it through every program she had. She took notes. She drank too much coffee, and slowly she began to understand something that no one else had noticed. "The channel is still open," she whispered to herself. She checked her data again. She was right. The aliens had not simply sent a message and closed the connection. They had left the channel open. They were waiting for a response. They expected Earth to answer. Picked up her phone and called her supervisor. Then she called his supervisor. Then she called his supervisor. Within an hour, she was explaining her discovery to people whose names she had only seen on television. "You are saying we can talk back to them?" asked General, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. "Yes, sir," said. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "They left the door open. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg." The room was silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What could they possibly say? Then a man in the back of the room spoke up. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes. His name was Daniel. He had been a Navy captain before he retired. Now he worked as a consultant, giving advice that most people ignored. "They expect us to beg," Daniel said slowly. "They have conquered 200 worlds. Every species they have met has done the same thing: surrender, negotiate, plead for mercy." "What is your point?" asked the general. Daniel smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had seen war and understood what it truly meant. "My point is simple. They have never met humans before. They do not know who we are. They do not know what we are capable of. They expect us to act like every other species they have conquered." He stood up and walked to the front of the room. "I say we introduce ourselves properly. I say we show them exactly what kind of species they are dealing with. I say we send them a message they will never forget." The room was silent. Then slowly General nodded. "Tell me what you have in mind." And in that moment, humanity began to fight back. Daniel stood before the Emergency Council and explained his plan. It was simple, it was crazy, and it might be the only chance humanity had. "They expect fear," Daniel said. "Every species they have conquered has responded with fear. They have begged for mercy. They have offered tribute. They have tried to negotiate their survival, and every single time the Dominion has crushed them anyway." He paused and looked around the room. Every eye was on him. "Fear is what they understand. Fear is what they expect. So we are going to give them something completely different. We are going to confuse them. We are going to make them wonder if conquering Earth is really worth the trouble." General leaned forward. "How exactly do you plan to do that?" "We are going to mock them," Daniel said simply. "We are going to send them a message so strange, so unexpected, that they will not know how to respond. We are going to show them that humans are not like any species they have ever met." The room erupted in arguments. Some people thought it was brilliant. Others thought it was insane. One diplomat called it the idea in human history. But in the end, they agreed to try. They had no better options. A special team was assembled to write the message. It included military strategists who understood psychological warfare. It included psychologists who studied how fear and confusion affected decision-making. It included linguists who could craft words with precision. And at Daniel's insistence, it included a comedian named Tors. Was 32 years old. He performed at comedy clubs in Los Angeles. He had never been to a military base before. He had certainly never been asked to help save the world. But Daniel had watched his videos online and seen something important. "You make people laugh," Daniel told him. "But you also make them think. You find the truth hiding in jokes. That is exactly what we need." Looked around the room full of generals and scientists and politicians. He felt very out of place. "So you want me to help write a message to aliens?" he asked. "Aliens who want to kill us all?" "Yes." Thought about it for a moment, then he shrugged. "Okay, I have done harder gigs. Let me see what we are working with." The team worked for 18 hours straight. They wrote draft after draft. They argued about every word. They tested different approaches. Some messages were too aggressive. Some were too weak. Some were simply not funny enough. Stayed with them the entire time. She was the only person who truly understood the communication channel. She explained how the signal worked, how the aliens would receive the message, how they might interpret it. "They have translation software," she said. "Very advanced. It will convert our words into their language, but it might miss the subtext. It might miss the humor. We need to be clear and confusing at the same time." "Clear and confusing," repeated. "My entire career has been building to this moment." Finally, after hours of work, they had a message they were happy with. Daniel read it aloud to the full council. "To the Dominion, thank you for your interest in Earth. We regret to inform you that we are not accepting applications for conquest at this time. Previous applicants include, but are not limited to, ourselves, multiple attempts over thousands of years, several ice ages, a meteor that removed our previous management team approximately 65 million years ago, countless plagues and diseases. Your application has been reviewed and filed accordingly. We wish you luck in your future endeavors, preferably elsewhere. Sincerely, humanity." The room was silent. Then Daniel continued. "P.S. We kept the descendants of the creatures that survived the meteor. They are called chickens now. We eat them for breakfast." For a long moment no one spoke. Then General started to laugh. It was a small laugh at first, but it grew. Soon other people were laughing too, not because they were happy, not because they thought everything would be okay, but because, for the first time since the alien message arrived, they felt something other than fear. They felt human. The message was sent 3 hours later. Operated the equipment herself. Her hands were steady as she pressed the final button. The signal shot across space, carrying humanity's response to the beings who wanted to destroy them. Then they waited. On the Eternal Conquest, Admiral received the response while eating his evening meal. He almost choked when he read it. He read it again, then a third time, then a fourth. The words did not change. The translation software confirmed that it was accurate. The humans had received the Dominion's ultimatum, and they had responded with this. "What does it mean?" I asked. She had never seen her admiral look so confused. "I do not know," admitted. "They are facing total destruction. They should be negotiating. They should be offering us whatever we want. Instead, they are joking." He pulled up more data about Earth. He had read the initial reports, but now he looked deeper. He wanted to understand these strange creatures who laughed in the face of death. What he found disturbed him. The humans had been killing each other for their entire history. They had fought wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over things that made no sense at all. They had invented weapons capable of destroying their own planet. Then they had built more of them. They had split the atom and used it to burn entire cities. "They are violent," I observed. "All species are violent," replied. "But these humans, they are violent against themselves. They do not need enemies, they create their own." He continued reading. The humans had survived ice ages that covered half their planet. They had survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out their sun. They had survived diseases that killed millions of them, and every time they had come back stronger. "They are also persistent," said quietly, "very persistent." He found records of human endurance, athletes who ran for days without stopping, climbers who reached the top of their highest mountains in conditions that would kill most species, explorers who traveled to the coldest and hottest places on their world just to prove they could. "Why would they do these things?" I asked. "There is no logical reason." "That is the problem," replied. They do not act logically, they act emotionally. They do things because they want to, not because they make sense. A logical species would have surrendered by now. A logical species would be begging for mercy. He looked at the human message again. The joke about the meteor, the reference to eating the descendants of ancient creatures, the casual dismissal of the Dominion's power. These humans are not logical, said, and that makes them very, very dangerous. He sent a report to the Dominion High Command. He included all the data he had gathered about Earth. He included his analysis of the human response. He requested guidance on how to proceed. The response came within hours. It was not what he expected. 17 admirals had read his report. 17 admirals who had conquered hundreds of worlds between them, and 12 of them had immediately requested reassignment to different sectors. 4 sector governors had filed formal protests against the Earth mission. 1 admiral had simply replied with 3 words: "Choose another planet." The High Command was not ordering him to retreat, but they were not giving him support either. For the first time in his career, was on his own. He sat in his command chair and stared at the distant blue planet on his screen. Such a small world, such a primitive species. It should have been an easy conquest, but had not survived 60 years of warfare by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts were telling him something important. Something was very wrong about Earth. The days passed slowly on Earth. People watched the skis and waited for the invasion to begin. Military forces around the world prepared for a fight they knew they could not win. Scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology. Governments made secret plans for survival. But the invasion did not come. Spent most of her time in the monitoring station, watching the alien fleet. The ships had not moved closer. They had not retreated either. They just sat there near Jupiter doing nothing. "What are they waiting for?" she asked Daniel. He had become a permanent fixture in the station, drinking coffee and staring at screens alongside the younger officers. "I think they are confused," Daniel said. "They do not know what to do with us. We did not follow the script they expected." "So what happens now?" Daniel shrugged. "We keep them confused. We do not let them figure us out. The longer they hesitate, the more time we have." On the Eternal Conquest, Admiral was doing exactly what Daniel suspected. He was trying to understand humanity. He had assigned his entire intelligence team to study Earth. They analyzed thousands of hours of human broadcasts. They read human books and watched human movies. They studied human history in detail. The more they learned, the more disturbed they became. Admiral, one of his analysts, reported, "I have been studying human military history. It is extensive." "All species have military history," replied. "What makes theirs different?" The analyst hesitated. "They never stop fighting. Even when there is no enemy, they fight each other. They have a concept called civil war where a nation destroys itself from within. They have done this many times, sometimes over ideas, sometimes over who should lead them, sometimes for reasons that are not clear at all." Nodded slowly. He had seen this in the data himself. "There is more," the analyst continued. "They developed their most advanced technologies during wartime, their flying machines, their computing devices, their nuclear weapons. All of these came from war. They are most creative when they are trying to kill each other." "That is common among primitive species," said. "War drives innovation." "Yes, but Admiral," the analyst paused. "They are not primitive anymore. They stopped having major wars between their great powers 70 years ago, but they kept innovating. They kept building. They went to their moon. They sent machines to other planets. They created a global network that connects billions of them instantly." "What is your point?" "My point is that they learned to innovate without war. They took the creativity that war gave them and applied it to everything else. They are advancing faster now than they ever did during wartime. If we give them another 100 years, another 50 years, maybe even another 20, I do not know what they will become." Dismissed the analyst and sat alone in his quarters. He thought about what he had heard. He thought about the human message, with its strange humor and casual confidence. He thought about a species that had survived everything their planet had thrown at them and had come out stronger every time. Then he made a decision. He would send another message. He would try to understand these humans directly. Perhaps talking to them would reveal a weakness he could exploit. The second Dominion message arrived on Earth at exactly 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time. This time, it was different. It was not a threat. It was a question. "People of Earth, the Dominion seeks clarification. Your response was atypical. We request diplomatic communication to discuss terms." The Emergency Council convened within an hour. The mood was different this time. There was still fear, but there was also hope. The aliens were hesitating. The aliens were uncertain. That meant humanity's plan was working. "They want to talk," General said. "What do we tell them?" Amy spoke up. She was a historian who specialized in psychological warfare. She had been advising the team since the beginning. "They are not scared of us yet," she said. "They are just confused. Confusion will not stop an invasion. Fear will. We need to make them truly afraid of what attacking Earth would mean." "How do we do that?" asked the diplomat. Amy smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We tell them the truth. We tell them exactly who we are and what we have done. We do not exaggerate. We do not lie. The truth about humanity is terrifying enough." The second message took longer to write. It was not meant to be funny. It was meant to be horrifying. The team gathered every piece of human history that showed the darkest side of humanity, every war, every atrocity, every act of cruelty and destruction. But they also included something else. They included the things that made humanity strong, the endurance, the persistence, the refusal to give up no matter what. The message began with a list of every major conflict in human history. It noted how many people had died in each one. It explained how humans had developed new weapons for each war, each one more destructive than the last. It mentioned, almost casually, that humans had invented weapons capable of destroying all life on their planet, and that they had built thousands of them. Then it talked about human biology, how humans could survive in extreme temperatures, how humans could heal from injuries that would kill other creatures, how humans could push their bodies beyond normal limits through sheer willpower. "We have members of our species who run 100 miles through deserts for recreation," the message said. "We climb our highest mountains without supplemental oxygen. We dive to the bottom of our deepest oceans in metal tubes. When parts of our bodies fail, we replace them with machines and continue functioning. We have survived ice ages, eruptions, and something we call finals week." The message ended with a simple statement. "Your invasion is scheduled. We will be ready. We always are. But we want you to understand something. Even if you destroy us, we will make sure you remember us forever. We will make the cost of conquering Earth so high that no one will ever forget what happened here. That is what humans do. We make our enemies pay. We make them bleed. And we never ever give up." Admiral read the message in his quarters. When he finished, his hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly. It was something deeper than fear. It was the realization that he had made a terrible mistake. He had thought Earth was just another primitive world. He had thought the conquest would be quick and easy. Now he understood the truth. Earth was not a target. Earth was a trap that had been set by a species too dangerous to provoke. He thought about what would happen if he invaded. He would win, probably. The Dominion had overwhelming force. But at what cost? How many ships would he lose? How many soldiers would die? And what would happen afterward? Would the humans ever truly surrender? Or would they fight forever, hiding in their mountains and caves, striking when least expected, making every day a nightmare for his occupation forces? Had conquered 97 planets. He had never lost, but he had also never faced anything like humanity before. For the first time in 60 years, Admiral was not sure if he wanted to fight. News traveled fast in the galaxy. The Dominion controlled most communication networks, but they could not control everything. Stories leaked, rumors spread, and the story of Earth was too strange to stay secret for long. It started with low-level officers talking to their friends. Then merchants who traded between systems heard whispers. Then diplomats from neutral species caught fragments of conversation. Within days, the entire galaxy knew that something unusual was happening near the Sol system. The collective was the first to investigate. They were beings of pure logic. They had no emotions, no feelings, no instincts. They made every decision based on cold, rational calculation. They had avoided war with the Dominion by simply proving that conquering them would cost more than it was worth. When they received copies of humanity's messages, they analyzed them for 3 standard cycles. Their greatest minds worked together to understand the strange species from the blue planet. Their conclusion was short and precise. Insufficient data for strategic assessment. Species demonstrates unpredictable behavior patterns inconsistent with rational self-interest. Recommend observation only. Direct engagement not advised. The Mellow Federation reacted very differently. The Mellow were a peaceful people, plant-based beings who had evolved on a gentle world with no predators. They had been conquered by the Dominion ago. Now they served as farmers and workers, growing food for their masters. They had accepted their fate long ago. They believed resistance was impossible. But when they read humanity's messages, something stirred inside them, something they had not felt in thousands of years. The eldest member of their secret council was called Grove That Remembers. He was over 400 years old. He had witnessed the Dominion conquer his world when he was young. He had watched his people give up hope. He had spent his entire life believing that nothing would ever change. Now he read about a species that refused to surrender, a species that faced certain destruction and responded with jokes, a species that had survived everything their universe had thrown at them. Perhaps, Grove That Remembers said slowly, we have been looking for allies in the wrong places. We always assumed that freedom would come from a species stronger than the Dominion, a species with better weapons, a species with bigger fleets, but maybe we were wrong. What do you mean? Asked a younger member of the council. Maybe freedom comes from something else entirely. Maybe it comes from the willingness to fight even when you cannot win. Maybe it comes from refusing to accept defeat. Maybe these humans understand something we have forgotten. The council discussed the matter for hours. In the end, they made a decision. They would not approach Earth directly. That would be too dangerous. But they would watch. They would wait. And if humanity somehow survived, the Mellow would be ready to talk. They had a very different reaction. They were warriors by nature, reptilian beings with thick scales and powerful bodies. Long ago, they had been one of the most feared species in the galaxy. Then the Dominion had come. The war had lasted 50 years. In the end, they had lost everything. Now they served the Dominion as soldiers. Their warrior spirit had been broken. Their pride had been crushed. They fought for their masters because they had forgotten how to fight for themselves. But some still remembered. In hidden places, far from Dominion eyes, small groups kept the old traditions alive. They told stories of the old wars. They trained in secret. They waited for a chance that might never come. When these underground heard about Earth, they became fascinated. They obtained copies of human military history. They studied human tactics and strategies, and they discovered something that changed everything. Humans had invented something called guerrilla warfare. The concept was simple. When you cannot defeat an enemy directly, you do not fight them directly. You hide. You strike when they do not expect it. You disappear before they can respond. You make them bleed slowly, day after day, year after year, until they decide that holding your territory is not worth the cost. They had never thought of war this way. They had always believed in honor, in facing your enemy directly, in winning or dying with dignity. But the humans had shown them another path, a path where the weak could defeat the strong, a path where losing a battle did not mean losing the war. These humans, one leader said, they understand something we never did. War is not about honor. War is about survival, and survival means doing whatever it takes to win. The underground began sharing human military texts with each other. They studied human history. They learned about revolutions and rebellions. They learned about species that had overthrown powerful empires through patience and persistence. For the first time in generations, they began to hope. Back on the Eternal Conquest, Admiral was receiving disturbing reports. The story of Earth was spreading faster than he could control. Other species were talking about the humans. Some were laughing, some were frightened, but all of them were paying attention. "This is becoming a problem," I said. "The High Command is asking questions. They want to know why we have not invaded yet." "Tell them we are gathering intelligence," replied. "Tell them we are being cautious." "They will not accept that forever. Sooner or later they will order us to attack." Knew she was right. He could not delay forever. But the more he learned about humanity, the less he wanted to fight them. He had studied their history in detail now. He had seen what they did to enemies who invaded their territories. He had learned about their wars, their revolutions, their endless capacity for violence. And he had learned something else, something that disturbed him more than anything. Humans could hate. They could hold grudges for generations. They could nurture anger until it became something dark and powerful. And when they finally got their revenge, they were merciless. Thought about what would happen if he invaded Earth. He would win the first battle, certainly. But then what? Would the humans accept defeat? Or would they fight forever, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back? Would they infiltrate Dominion worlds? Would they teach other conquered species how to resist? Would they become a virus spreading through the empire, infecting everything they touched? The risk was too great. The potential cost was too high. For the first time in his career, Admiral was considering something he had never considered before. He was considering retreat. But he could not retreat without permission. And the High Command would never give permission unless they understood what they were dealing with. He needed to make them see what he saw. He needed to make them understand that Earth was not worth the price. Began preparing a new report. He included everything he had learned about humanity, every war, every atrocity, every example of human endurance and persistence. He included analysis from his intelligence team. He included projections of what a long-term occupation of Earth might cost. When the report was finished, he sent it to every admiral in the Dominion fleet. He sent it to every sector governor. He sent it to the High Command itself. Then he waited to see what would happen. The response came within hours. It was exactly what he had hoped for. 17 more admirals requested reassignment. 4 governors threatened to resign if the Earth mission continued. And from the High Command itself came a single message: proceed with extreme caution. Await further orders. For the first time, the Dominion was afraid. The waiting was the hardest part. On Earth, people went about their daily lives, but nothing felt normal anymore. Everyone knew that alien ships were sitting near Jupiter. Everyone knew that humanity's fate hung in the balance, and everyone wondered how the story would end. Had barely slept in weeks. She spent every waking hour at her monitoring station, watching the alien fleet, waiting for any sign of movement. Daniel stayed with her most of the time. They had become friends during the crisis, united by the strange role they played in humanity's survival. "Do you think it worked?" asked one morning. Her eyes were red from exhaustion. "I do not know," Daniel admitted, "but they have not attacked yet. That has to mean something." Nodded slowly. "We got lucky, you know. When they sent that first message, they left the channel open. If they had not done that, we never would have had a chance to respond." "Maybe it was not luck," Daniel said. "Maybe they wanted us to respond. Maybe they expected us to beg. Maybe they wanted to enjoy our fear before they destroyed us. Instead, we made them afraid of us. Daniel smiled. Funny how things work out sometimes. On the Eternal Conquest, Admiral was preparing for a meeting he had dreaded his entire career. The High Council of the Dominion had called an emergency session to discuss the Earth situation. Every major leader in the Empire would be present, and would have to explain why he had not conquered a primitive planet with inferior technology. The meeting took place via holographic communication, stood in the center of a virtual chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their eyes watched him from every direction. Admiral, the Supreme Commander, began. You have served the Dominion faithfully for 60 years. You have conquered 97 planets. You have never failed a mission. And yet here you stand, asking us to abandon the conquest of a world that should have been easy. Yes, Supreme Commander, replied. His voice was steady, but inside he was terrified. I am asking you to reconsider the Earth mission. Why? Because conquering Earth would be a mistake. The cost would far exceed any benefit we might gain. A murmur went through the council. No admiral had ever said such a thing before. Planets did not resist the Dominion. Planets were harvested. Explain, the Supreme Commander ordered. Took a deep breath and began. He told them about humanity's history. He told them about the wars and the violence and the endless capacity for destruction. He told them about human endurance, about the ability to survive anything and come back stronger. He told them about guerrilla warfare and asymmetric conflict, and the way humans could turn any terrain into a killing ground. But more than anything, said, I want to tell you about their spirit. These humans do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. Even when they face impossible odds, they fight. Even when fighting is irrational, they fight. They have a saying on their world. They say they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. I believe them. He paused and looked around the virtual chamber. If we invade Earth, we will win the first battle. Our technology is superior. Our numbers are greater. But the battle will not end there. The humans will retreat into their mountains and their cities. They will hide and strike and disappear. They will turn every street corner into an ambush. They will make us pay in blood for every mile we advance. We have dealt with resistance before, one council member said dismissively. Not like this, replied. Most species resist because they are afraid to die. Humans resist because they are willing to die. There is a difference. Fear makes species desperate. Willingness makes them dangerous. And humans are very, very willing. The Supreme Commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. You are recommending retreat. I am recommending survival, said. The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years because we choose our battles wisely. We conquer the weak and avoid the strong. Earth appears weak, but it is not. It is a trap, and if we step into that trap, we may never escape. The council debated for hours. Some members wanted to invade anyway, to prove that the Dominion feared nothing. Others agreed with that the cost was too high. In the end, the decision came down to a single question. What would happen if other conquered species learned about Earth? The answer was clear. If other species saw that the Dominion had been frightened away by a primitive world, they might start to believe that resistance was possible. They might start to hope, and hope was the most dangerous thing in the universe. But if other species saw the Dominion being slowly drained by an endless war on Earth, the result would be even worse. They would see weakness. They would see that the mighty Dominion could be hurt, and that knowledge might spark rebellions across the Empire. In the end, the Council made its decision. Earth would be designated as protected territory. No Dominion ship would approach within 1 light-year of the Sol system. The humans would be left alone. It was not a popular decision. Many in the Dominion were furious, but the Supreme Commander understood something that the others did not. Some victories were not worth winning. Some enemies were better left alone. Admiral transmitted the final message to Earth himself. It was short and simple. The Dominion recognizes Earth as sovereign territory. No further contact will be initiated. This decision is final. The message arrived at 2:34 a.m. Eastern Time. Was the first to see it. She stared at her screen for a full minute, unable to believe what she was reading. Then she started to cry. Daniel found her a few minutes later, still crying at her station. "What happened?" he asked, suddenly afraid. "Did they attack?" Shook her head. She could not speak. She simply pointed at the screen. Daniel read the message. Then he read it again. Then he sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "We won," he said quietly. "We actually won." The news spread across the planet within hours. At first, people did not believe it. It seemed impossible. A species of 7 billion people, armed with primitive technology, had frightened away an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. It could not be real. But it was real, and slowly celebration began. People laughed and cried and hugged strangers in the streets. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded. For one shining moment, all of humanity was united in joy. But Daniel was not celebrating. He was thinking about the future. He found on the roof of the monitoring station, looking up at the stars. "It is not over," he said quietly. "I know," replied. "They will come back or someone else will." "Yes, but now we have time. Time to prepare, time to build, time to become what we need to become." Smiled sadly. "We need to stop fighting each other and start working together." "We will. Humans always do when there is a good enough reason." Daniel looked up at the sky. "And now we have the best reason in the universe. We are not alone anymore, and everyone out there knows who we are." The message humanity had sent was still spreading through the galaxy. Other species read it with fascination and fear. The Mellow began making secret plans. The trained harder than ever. They updated their assessments. And across 1,000 worlds, beings looked toward the Sol system and wondered what would happen next. The third rock from an unremarkable star was no longer anonymous. It was no longer weak. It was no longer safe to ignore. Earth had announced itself to the universe, and the universe would never forget. On star maps across the galaxy, the Sol system was being updated. It was no longer marked as unexplored or primitive or easy target. It was marked with a simple warning, in every language and every format. "Do not disturb." And far away, on a small blue planet, humanity looked up at the stars and began to dream. They had survived the first test. They had proven that they deserved their place in the universe, but the story was just beginning. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited, new enemies, new allies, new adventures that no one could imagine. But for now, Earth was safe, and that was enough. Turned to Daniel with a smile. "What do we do now?" she asked. Daniel looked at the stars one last time. Then he turned and headed for the door. "Now," he said, "we get to work." The galaxy was watching, and humanity was ready.